This episode will literally force your brain to fall asleep again. Falling asleep is one of aging's most widespread and overlooked struggles. Nearly half of all seniors worldwide have difficulty drifting into sleep, which means more than 400 million older adults lie awake night after night while the rest of the world rests. It steals your peace, drains your energy, and quietly erodes your confidence in your own body. That is why this episode matters. Today, Japan's oldest doctor will show you why the brain keeps you awake and how you as a senior can teach it to fall asleep more easily again. Welcome back to the Senior Health Podcast, where East meets West to help you stay steady, clear, and independent after 60. Today we are uncovering why sleep becomes harder and how simple, research-backed techniques can help you fall asleep faster without medication. Because here is what most seniors never hear. Difficulty falling asleep is not failure. It is often tension, miscommunication, and a body that has forgotten how to feel safe enough to rest. So sitting across from me is Japan's oldest physician. He has spent nearly a century teaching seniors how to restore that calm, and today he is here for you. Doctor, welcome back.
Thank you, John. It is always a pleasure. So let's start with a question for everyone. Have you ever found yourself lying awake even when you were so tired? Most of the time we tend to blame age, but often it is your nervous system asking for help.
I have, and I think this is the right moment for you as a listener to share your experience in the comments. Please type 1 if you struggle to fall asleep at least a few nights a week, and type 2 if you do not.
John, difficulty falling asleep is one of the most overlooked signs that the nervous system has become overloaded. When tension builds in the muscles and breath becomes shallow, the brain interprets that state as danger. It protects you by keeping you awake, even when you feel exhausted. Unfortunately, most seniors think this is permanent, but today I will show them it is not.
Amazing. What will exactly happen in this episode?
We will walk through 5 techniques that help the brain shift into rest and the movements that calm the body from the inside out. And if you have ever felt trapped in a sleepless night, I suggest staying with us until the end.
This reminds me of a patient I once treated. She was 74 and told me she had not fallen asleep easily in years. Her mind raced the moment she turned off the light, but once she learned how to release hidden tension and slow her breath, her sleep changed almost overnight. It was like her brain remembered how to rest.
Exactly. When the body feels safe again, sleep follows.
So, doctor, what is the first technique we will be discussing today?
Before we talk about any technique, we must understand something important. The brain cannot fall asleep until it feels safe enough to release control. Seniors often think they are fighting their thoughts, but they are really fighting a nervous system that has forgotten how to settle. When we recognize that, everything begins to change.
You are describing something I hear every week in my own clinic. Seniors tell me they feel tired but somehow still wired, like their bodies forgot where the off switch is.
That happens when the signals that guide rest become confused. Light, tension, and unprocessed stress begin to mislead the brain, and it tries to protect you by staying awake. It is a kind response, but it becomes painful when it happens night after night. The good news is that these signals can be guided back into balance.
That is comforting to hear, because many seniors believe this is something they simply have to live with.
They do not. The brain is far more adaptable than most people realize, even after 60. It responds to calm environments and predictable cues, and it relearns quickly when we give it the right prompts. I have seen seniors who struggled for years fall asleep more easily once they understood this.
It makes me wonder what those first cues should be for someone who is lying awake right now.
We begin by shaping the space around us. The mind listens to the environment long before it listens to the thoughts in your head. When we adjust that space with intention, the nervous system starts to loosen its grip. This is the first doorway into sleep.
That makes so much sense, and I feel many listeners leaning in right now. What should they change first if they want to give their brain that signal of safety?
Start by softening the world around you. The brain pays attention to light and temperature long before it listens to tired thoughts. When you adjust those signals, the nervous system begins to loosen its guard.
I see that often. A senior tells me they feel exhausted, yet their room is bright or warm in a way that quietly keeps them alert.
Of course, even small changes in the environment can nudge the brain toward wakefulness. When the eyes sense brightness or the body feels too much heat, the mind interprets it as daytime. We can reverse that message with gentle, intentional cues.
That already feels much more doable for someone lying awake right now.
Yes, and this is where most seniors find their first moment of relief. They realize the problem is not willpower, but miscommunication between the senses and the brain. When we help those senses recalibrate, sleep becomes less of a battle.
It is remarkable how the simplest shifts can change the entire night.
The key here is that the nervous system is always listening. It listens to the darkness, to the coolness of the air, and to the quiet space you create. When you offer those cues consistently, the brain begins to trust that it is safe to let go, and this sets the stage for what comes next.
That makes me wonder what someone can do next once the room begins to feel calmer. What is the first technique that helps the body release that deeper tension so the brain can finally follow?
Let's begin with a technique that has helped thousands of seniors fall asleep more easily. When a senior cannot rest, the muscles often stay quietly tense from the day. If we guide those muscles to tighten for a moment and then soften, the brain receives a powerful signal that it is finally safe to slow down.
I see that so often. Seniors sit in my office with their shoulders raised, their hands stiff, and they swear they are relaxed, even though their bodies are still bracing.
That is why I teach progressive muscle relaxation. It is simple. You pick one part of the body, like your feet, and gently squeeze the muscles for a slow count of 3. Then you let them loosen completely and feel the difference.
That is wonderfully clear. It sounds like something anyone could try right now without feeling intimidated.
Yes, and they move upward in small steps. After the feet, they tighten the calves for 3 seconds, then release. Then the thighs and release. The hands and release. The face and release. This slow journey up the body tells the nervous system that each area is safe and supported.
I can imagine someone listening already feeling a little calmer just thinking through those steps.
Many seniors tell me the warmth that follows each release feels like a wave moving through them. That warmth is the body remembering how to relax. The more often they practice, the faster the brain begins to quiet itself.
It is remarkable how a few moments of gentle tension and release can change the entire night for someone.
And here is where it becomes even more interesting. Once the body learns this rhythm, the mind starts responding to it automatically. There is another technique that builds on this effect and helps the brain soften even more. It works in a very different way, and it surprises many seniors with how effective it can be.
That makes me genuinely curious, because it sounds like the next step goes even deeper. What exactly does the body do differently in that second technique, and how does it help someone drift closer to sleep?
The body scan works differently because it does not ask the muscles to move at all. It teaches seniors to place their attention gently on one area at a time, starting at the head and moving downward. As the mind visits each area, the body begins to soften in a natural and unforced way.
I hear many patients say that their thoughts race at night. This sounds like a way to give those thoughts something calming to hold on to.
Yes, and that gentle focus interrupts the cycle of worry. When a senior notices the feel of their forehead against the pillow or the warmth in their cheeks, The brain shifts away from stress and toward sensation. That shift alone lowers arousal and brings the nervous system closer to sleep.
That is beautifully simple, and it feels comforting even to imagine it.
The key here is slowness. Seniors should move from the forehead to the jaw, to the throat, then to the chest, and pausing just long enough to notice what each area is doing. You shouldn't judge anything you might find. Just simply notice and allow everything to loosen on its own.
It sounds like that is giving the body finally permission to stop bracing.
Exactly. Many seniors tell me that halfway through the scan, they feel their breath deepen without trying. That deeper breath is a sign the brain has begun to trust the process. When that trust appears, sleep often follows soon after.
Wow, I cannot wait to try this myself.
There is also something else that happens during the body scan. As the attention drifts downward, the breath and heartbeat begin to synchronize. That synchronization is one of the most reliable signs that the nervous system is shifting toward rest. When that happens, the next technique becomes even more effective.
That rhythm you describe feels incredibly important, and I can imagine listeners wanting to build on it. How does the next step use that shifting state to bring someone even closer to sleep?
The next step uses that shifting state by giving the breath a clear pattern to follow. The rhythm becomes something the brain can lean on, almost like a steady hand in the dark. Box breathing is one of the gentlest ways to create that sense of stability.
It really does feel like a natural extension of the calm that begins during the body scan.
Of course, you guide the breath through 4 equal parts. Inhale for 4 seconds, pause for 4, exhale for 4, and pause once more. That even rhythm travels through the vagus nerve and gently signals the nervous system to settle.
I have watched people do this in my clinic, and it is remarkable how quickly their shoulders drop and their faces soften.
Yes, and that visible relaxation is not imagined. When the breath becomes predictable, the mind releases its grip. I often say that a quiet breath creates a quiet brain. After just a few cycles, the heart rate steadies, and the body remembers what calm feels like.
That shift seems to be the moment where the night finally starts to loosen.
Exactly. The breath becomes an anchor instead of a reaction. Muscles let go, the chest opens a little, and the whole system stops searching for danger signals. This is why box breathing is used by medical teams and athletes during stress. It teaches the body to pause instead of brace.
It is encouraging that something so structured can also feel so soft and soothing.
That softness is what matters. You can use this technique before bed, during a nighttime awakening, or even in a moment of daytime overwhelm. The breath responds immediately, and the mind tends to follow. Over time, repetition turns it into a familiar pathway toward rest.
I can imagine listeners breathing along with us right now, feeling their bodies slow without forcing anything.
Yes, and stay with me, because there is a next step that builds on this foundation. It works by stretching the exhale, which activates the body's natural calming system more strongly than anything we have done so far. Once someone feels that shift, it often changes the way they approach sleep entirely.
That makes me even more curious. How does lengthening the exhale create a deeper sense of release? And what does it do inside the body as someone prepares for sleep?
I will explain. We call this next technique diaphragmatic breathing. It works because it activates the body's natural calming system. When the exhale becomes longer than the inhale, the heart rate drops, and the brain receives a clear message that the night is safe. This shift prepares the whole body to drift towards sleep.
I have seen that change instantly in someone's posture. The shoulders lower and a kind of quiet settles over them.
Yes, and the technique itself is simple. Start by placing a hand on the belly so you can feel it rise on the inhale. Then breathe in for 4 seconds and let the exhale stretch gently to 6 or even 8. That longer release guides the nervous system into a softer rhythm.
It feels like the breath turns into a signal instead of just an automatic habit.
Exactly. With each slow exhale, the body learns to release tension it has been holding all day. The mind stops chasing its old worries, and the muscles begin to melt into the bed. This is often the moment when people feel the first true wave of sleepiness.
It is amazing how something so small can shift the entire night.
Small, yes, but powerful. Diaphragmatic breathing is especially helpful during those early morning awakenings when the mind tries to speed up again. The breath does not argue or resist. It simply settles into the longer rhythm and brings the mind with it.
I can imagine someone listening trying this right now and noticing how quickly the body softens.
When the breath slows like this, the mind becomes easier to guide. That calm creates the perfect opening for a mental technique that interrupts racing thoughts and gently redirects the brain away from worry. It surprises many people with how well it works, especially when the night feels restless.
That is fascinating, and it makes me curious about what you mean. What is this mental technique, and how does it help someone quiet their thoughts even further?
The technique is called cognitive shuffling. It helps quiet the mind by breaking the pattern of thoughts that keep looping at night. Instead of wrestling with those thoughts, you gently redirect the mind towards something simple and harmless.
I have seen people try to fight their thoughts, and it only seems to make them louder. This feels like a softer way to guide the mind.
Exactly. You start with an easy word, something plain like apple or blanket. Then you think of other words that begin with the same letter, and you picture each one for just a moment. The goal is not perfection. It is to give the mind a small, steady task that pulls it away from worry.
I can imagine that being surprisingly comforting, especially during those long hours when thoughts feel endless.
It often is. The mind becomes occupied just enough to loosen its grip on stress. Before long, the images begin to blur, and the mind drifts the way it does when you are half asleep. That drifting is what allows the body to move closer to rest.
It is amazing how something so simple can have that kind of effect.
And there is another option for those who prefer not to work with words. They can turn to something intentionally boring, like a slow, gentle story with no plot. The key is choosing something that keeps the mind lightly engaged without stirring emotion or urgency.
That gives people a lot of room to find what works for them, and it feels so practical.
Yes, and this is where something interesting happens. When the mind becomes occupied in this soft, repetitive way, the nervous system often follows with a wave of calm. It is almost as if the body says, "Now I can finally let go." That moment becomes the doorway to sleep for many listeners.
I can imagine someone trying this tonight and feeling the shift within a few minutes. It makes me wonder how the body reacts next once that doorway finally opens, and what signs someone might notice as they get close to falling asleep.
John, when that doorway opens, the body forces itself to fall asleep.
Let's end on that note. If you are still listening, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and leave a comment. Oh, and watch this next video right now.
Yes, please.
We've picked this one especially for you.